for the option is basically what the air traffic control is trying to intend is whatever you chose to do at that point of time, yeah, you can go ahead and do it. So yeah, we can, one last question before we jump in. Sorry, I was trying to get into that video thing, just be much better, but anyways. Want to try this? Departing tower control airport, and tower tells you contact departure, you call departure control. They ask you to ident, what are you trying to do there? Any guesses?
Tell them your full call sign and destination.
Tell them your full, oops, okay. That was a transponder, right? So, okay. Yeah. So basically, there's a button called ident. Sometimes there's a button, sometimes it's a knob. You just turn it to on a transponder where you squawk. So these are the words where, you know, you kind of listen to when they say, okay, squawk, and they give you a number when you try contacting them. So, you know, there's a lot to talk about, and it's kind of hard to find a best place to start. And I believe you guys. So, Ebony, have you listened to the previous class that we had?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. So just want to know, do you remember of anything? So this is your basic VFR sectional, right? So, okay. Yeah, right. So the first thing is in an IFR situation, so you know the basic difference here when we're talking IFR and VFR. So it's basically the flight rules, and it's nothing to do about the weather, right? Mm-hmm. That's the usual idea. Everyone has it. So it's nothing to do about the weather. You can do IFR practice. You practice IFR in a clear, bright sky. So this is the VFR sectional here. I'm using Sky Vector. You guys can use FlowFlight. Anything is okay. And welcome to the IFR charts. And here, this is called IFR low chart, where it's used if you're not flying at flight levels. There's an altitude specified when you go really high. You use IFR high charts, but as a general aviation pilot, we use IFR low charts in regards to navigating ourselves. So here in VFR, can anyone tell me what this is? There's a mark on the Watts Woodland Airport. There's like kind of flag thing. So what do you think that is? Any guesses there?
The wind socket is
the flag.
Yes.
So
that's the wind socket.
Yeah.
So maybe the winds are gusty, or
So okay, so that says that's a checkpoint. That's a visual checkpoint. That means when you're up in the sky, and look here, Davis, and you see a flag here. Mm-hmm. That's a visual checkpoint again. That means when you're up in the sky and you're trying to, let's say you're trying to land in Sacramento International Airport here, and you contact the tower, and then they're going to ask you saying, hey, let's say, let's come up with a call sign here saying 7243 Foxtrot, right? And then they'll be like, hey, Cherokee 7243 Foxtrot, let me know when you're at Watts Woodland, right? Or maybe they're going to tell you, hey, let me know when you're at Davis.
Okay.
So that they can clear up space and then get you visual in there. So in a VFR situation, I mean, in a clear, bright sky when you're flying VFR, right? Mm-hmm. When everything's clear, you fly around, you look down and you can find Watts Woodland. You look down, you can find the city Davis, let's say you're flying in the day. But what if it's all cloudy, right? What if it's all you're in the clouds, nothing's visible, and how would someone ask you where you're at, and how would you let them know, right? Mm-hmm. And these would be those places you would let them know where you're at, right? And these are funny names, okay? They're all funny names. There's no reason or rhyme why they gave those names there, right? For example, here it says EPOF, right? Here it says Eligi, Zaco. I mean, yeah, these all funny names here, right? And you see how they're marked. The airports is still marked, but then there's no city, there's no flags, there's nothing. It's pretty much more clear, right?
Right.
So this is how you contact them, and we'll talk much in detail about what all these numbers are, what's happening, and everything. Just go back and forth from VFR. You can pull this up in your ForeFlight too, and you see there's a VFR here, right? There's an airport. There's a Sacramento Mather Airport. You see my cursor here. There's a Sacramento Mather. This is a VFR. This is a VFR symbol. Everyone knows that, right? And it says the frequency that you tune into this. But you would not find that so easy, right? When you're in a sectional. But in a IFR low chart, you can spot all these things much more clear. So, and you see these lines and everything, these black lines. It says here it says V392494. Here it says V195, V23, and everything, right? So Victor 3, Victor 19, Victor 392494. And you might see, you might start noticing so many numbers up here. So it's 2000, there's 1600, there's 9, there's 104, 35. What's happening, right? There's so many numbers and lines. And so what basically IFR entitles, right? When you're flying, when they say you're flying instrument, you're instrument rated, you're flying in clouds and IFR flight rules, right? Instrument flight rules. What it entitles basically, and all this is built up on one factor, I would say, that is predictability, right? In the during all phases of your flight, everyone knows, I'm in control in this specific example, everyone knows where you're at, what time we will be at what place, right? Because let's imagine you see Grime here, see Grime, and then you hear this, you see this line. So basically you actually fly on these lines on an IFR. When you're in an IFR flight plan and let's say you're going to point A to B, right? Let's say you're going from, you see Colusa County here, Colusa County. Let's say you want to go from Colusa County to Sacramento International here, right? Then as an instrument radar pilot, you would not try to just make your way through there, because now the entire scenario is built up on you're in the clouds and you're not able to see anything, right? So what would you do is you pick up the closest line, right? In this case, that is the Victor 2-3 here. And you fly to that thing, and then you now make your way all the way to Sacramento International, right? So now in that case, when you do that, they would exactly know when you're at Yuba here, and from Yuba to Grime, you see this number down here, says 7? 7 nautical miles. So they will exactly know, because when you're, another thing when you do is, in an IFR, you file a flight plan, right? And then you enter your true speed, true airspeed, what's the true airspeed that you're going to climb with, that you're going to cruise with. So they know with that airspeed and this distance here, you would be at Grime in this many minutes, and then from Grime, you will be at EPOF. You see this number down here, says 9. That's 9 nautical miles. So at Grime and EPOF, so in 9 nautical miles, let's say you're flying 100 knots, 9 nautical miles, you're going to be at EPOF around 8 minutes. So basically, everything that is predictability. Where you're going to be at what time and how you're going to reach there and everything. And I hope, and I kind of joined in on the previous IFR class, and the instructor there did a really great job in saying, laying out the rules, the regulations, what are the regulations and how they plan for it. And I wanted to take the next session here, this one, right now, what we're doing in depth of, what exactly it is, right? Because I was saying it earlier that a private pilot kind of feels like he's been thrown in the bus, kind of seeing all of this. But then if you understand that it's all predictability and it's about predictability and about numbers, right? It's just gets so easier for you to fly. It's almost, you can feel like you're flying blindfolded. I mean, you have your instruments for sure, but that's the confidence that you can kind of expect when you are instrument rated. So if you had any second thought on getting that instrument rating, please go and get it, find an instructor and go for it, because even if it's for when you pick this habit of flying for fun, that instrument, the extra rating for the instrument just gives you that. I mean, it's a different dimension of flying, and then gives you a great confidence on flying even in a little bit of challenging weathers.
Yeah, and I agree with Uday. Getting your instrument rating, even when it's VFR conditions and you've got some haze and the sun's in your eyes, legally, you can fly, but it's almost like you're in IFR conditions, or at nighttime, it's legal, but you can't see. So even if you're not going to move forward with aviation in any professional manner, you still want to get your instrument rating. So thank you, Uday. That's absolutely correct.
Thank you. So yeah, and then you see a lot of numbers. So now when you're flying in sort of everything's clouds everywhere, you're not able to see. How do you know that you're approaching that closest terrain at you? How do you know that you might not run into something, right? And exactly where that is these numbers here. Look at this, 4,000, 2,000. We just established the 7 is the distance between Yuba and Grime, right? And just like VFR checkpoints, they have those intersections right there, right? It says this is Grime, this is Yuba. So it's all funny names. They're all put there for it's an IFR thing, right? So there's these altitudes here. That's what suggests you. If they're trying to say here is, if Cherokee 7243 Foxtrot, right? You want to go from Colusa to Sacramento International, you're flying here from Yuba to Grime. They're suggesting if you don't want to hit anything, please fly at an altitude of at least 2,000. Right? So you see, now everything's much more simple, right? You don't have to worry about flying VFR the east altitudes, even altitudes, odd altitudes. Kind of remember that, Jessica? Ebony? Anyone? Remember those even and odd altitudes when you're flying VFR? Now that's another less thing to worry for you to worry about if you just simply follow these altitudes and numbers here. So everything is basically laid out there for you, right? Everything's here. You follow those numbers and directions, and then you'll be safe. That's the most fascinating thing that I've had, is when I was training initially, you kind of wear something called a hood, right? I mean, you wear that hood, kind of finish the approach, and they would ask you to go, your instructor would ask you to go visual, and then you realize the moment you, let's say you came out of that cloud or out of the hood, you'll realize you were right at the runway. I mean, that's a really fun feeling, I would say. And so let's say we wanted to come here, continuing here, we want to come here to and land at Mechlin, right here, like really close to international here. So what you can do here is, yeah. So to land at Mechlin, so you would come up with a question saying, how can I try to even land when I can see nothing, right? So how do I know which way to turn? I mean, hey, you did a good job getting me from Colusa, from Colusa County to Sacramento International. You asked me to follow this line. You asked me, hey, try find, so Uber and Grime. So how do you find this Uber and Grime, and how do you find these things? So one thing is your Garmin, right? In your Garmin, so if you have Garmins in your planes, when you kind of had the basic interface, right, where you punch in the airport code and you hit direct to, and it gives you a magenta line, right? You guys have that experience using the Garmin? Okay, so in the same way, if you punch in your Garmin saying Uber, it's going to show up, and if you're going to punch in Grime, it's going to show up. It's actually a little bit amazing here. Just like how you've been navigating yourself in the GPS, right? Just like in your mobile, right? In your when you use Apple Maps, in case kind of hit a location, you can find the directions. The same way you can hit Uber, and then you'll find that place. Another way how you can find that place is if you see all the way where that line's taking you, it's taking you to this VOR here. See the symbol? It says Sacramento VOR. If you tune in to 115.2 and you see this number here that says 329, and you tune in to a radial 329, right? And you see this number 42 in this box here? That is the DME. So if you tune into SAC VOR and your DME shows a number 42, you're at Uber. Isn't that great? And then from Uber, right, you subtract 7, because you know from Uber to Grime, 7 nautical miles, and 42 minus 7, you got 35. So after 7, when your DME in your aircraft shows you 35, you're at Grime. So it's more about in terms of numbers, and you know, and you have one less thing to worry about where you're heading to, what's happening, because all you have to do is make sure you have those bunch of numbers in your head. You have this blade here when you're flying in your foreflight. Also, when you connect your plane to the foreflight here, a Sentry, or your iPad to a Sentry, you can also see your plane moving here in these areas and then take you. So yeah, and you see this number here? This big number says 10 and 4. Can you guess what it is? Can anyone guess what it is? Jessica, I guess you're not unmuted, but anyways, if you wanted to answer. So can you see this
an altitude? Yeah, is it an altitude that you either should be clear of, or?
You're right. So in that specific quadrant, that's the altitude of the a terrain, which is going to keep you clear of obstacles. Mm-hmm. And that's the same number. That's how the number is displayed when you're flying, when you're in your instrument IFR low chart. So it's saying for this quadrant, the altitude you must be following if you want to go clear of obstacles. Minimal altitude here is 10.4. So that's something called OROCA, which is spelled which is Oscar Romeo Oscar Charlie Alpha. So off route obstruction clearance altitude. Oscar Romeo Oscar Charlie Alpha. So but it says, hey, from Tulsa County, you want to go to, let's say, follow this line here. Let's follow Victor 200. Actually, you guys can pull up a foreflight on your foreflight and turn on the IFR low charts from the layers from the left-hand corner. And then you can type in this airport code and find this VOR here. The VOR says RBUCL, right? That's a GPS waypoint. We'll talk about that. So let's say from this VOR here, so VOR, It's Williams VOR. You can follow me on your forward flight too. So from Williams VOR, let's say you follow this line, Victor, which is Victor, right? 200. So instead of saying this line, I would say airway, right? Just another fancy word for us pilots. So say airway. So Victor Airway 200. If you fly at a radial of what? Can anyone answer? Which radial would you tune into in this VOR so that you can fly on this line here? Victor 200, Victor Airway. If you see this number here, right in the beginning, you can see, can you see my cursor?
Yes, the 251.
Yeah, so on the 251 radial, if you tune in the 251 radial on your VOR, and then just fly straight, also, yeah, correcting for the wind and everything, for the deviations and everything, the Victor 200, you'll be on Victor 200. And if you continue, you look at this number here. If you continue straight ahead on this Victor 200, you will end up at this VOR here, which is, I guess, it's a second. So, but let's say you don't want to follow that line. Let's say you want to take off from Colsa County, you want to come down to this VOR, but you didn't want to follow Victor 200 all the way here. You just wanted to fly. You just wanted to fly here. You just wanted to fly starting from here. So in this particular case, you would follow the off-route obstruction clearance. So what they're trying to say is, hey, Cherokee 7243 Foxtrot, if you follow Victor 200 on a 251 radial from Williams VOR, you're good to fly 6,200 feet. Can I get that? So this number here, 6,200 feet. So like, if you want to follow this route, you're good flying 6,200 feet, and we will assure that you're not going to hit any obstacle or something. But if you plan to just fly as you desire to make it there, let's say you want to make it to Lapid, then they suggest you have to follow an altitude of 10,400. So why is that so? Let's see what happened there. Why is that so? Let's see, I just made those drawings, right? And this is how it shows on a VFR sectional. You see, so in this route here where we had the Victor 200, it was this straight line here. So as you can see, the highest terrain is, there's one highest obstruction there is at 3,600. And they said, hey, you can fly up to 6,200 so that you're clear from that highest obstruction. So you see how it goes, and then you don't have to worry about visually clearing this obstacle here at 3587. You now know that if you follow 255 radial, and you see that's how even on the VFR sectional, there's a compass rose here that's asking if you just fly 251 radial, right? So you see, you almost unlocked a whole new chapter here where you don't have to worry about physically being clear of an obstacle, and you're not worried about getting that CFIT, which is getting into a terrain, a clear, bright day. So that was, so I'm trying to touch bases on all the factors and a little bit in depth of, why there is what there is on this chart and why it is so much more less stressful when you follow those numbers and headings and directions, and you would make sure that you go to your destination nice and safe. So Yeah. So now let's jump in a little bit into understanding how would you come to an airport, like let's say approach a runway and make that landing, right? You have something called an approach, right? So could be a VOR approach. Let's say VOR. Since we talked about VOR, let's talk about a VOR approach. Here are just a picture here. Let's talk about VOR. Share this screen. Right. Can you see this screen here? Cool. So yeah, so here, this is the approach. This is the approach. It's called an approach plate. So this is how it looks like when you're trying to come and make that landing. You can also pull this from the from your forward plate. You can figure that out later. But here, what it's trying to say here is the same thing. It's the same thing as we talked about. As we talked about here, right? So earlier, when we talked about flying here, right? Flying from the Williams VOR here. And in this case, in the earlier case, we talked about flying from Colsa County to Uba intersection, and from there on to Grime, and all the way to Sacramento International, correct? So it's basically asking you to do the same thing here. Let me clear this. It's saying if you fly on a radio, let's see Victor 23, right? So if you're taking out from Colsa County and then you're trying to go on to the Victor 23, let's back up all the way where that line leads to. And then you can see a radio, right? From SAC VOR, correct? Makes sense?
Yes, I'm following.
Yeah, so it's basically to make you understand about really looking at IFR load chart, what's in there, and why do we need to bother about those lines? We're talking about, you know, look, there's this VOR and there's this radio, and then if you follow that, and if someone asks you, hey, where are you flying to? Hey, Cherokee 74 Foxtrot, where are you flying to? And you can say, oh, I'm on a Victor 23, right? So then, and then everyone can be on the same page. And then you say, I'm on a Victor 23, flying from Colsa County to Sacramento International. And then they'll be like, okay, we found you. Okay, we found Victor 23. Can you tell us where you're at right now? And then you can say, oh, I just reached Yuba intersection. Or you just say Yuba, I just reached Yuba. Or you say, yeah, I'm at Grime. And they'll be like, okay. And now everyone knows that in 9 nautical miles, you'll be at EPOF. So everyone's on the same page here. So basically you're giving off the predictability of what's happening. So let's say you're at Grime and something happens and they spot you here somewhere, or maybe here somewhere, then they'll know something's wrong. Maybe it's not something that you're expecting. So, so in the same way, right? Let's say you're coming in here from EPOF, and then you want to land at McLean, right? And over here, how do you know? So EPOF is in Victor 23. And then this line just only continues straight ahead. And then you can know you can land in Sacramento International. And what would you do if you want to make here and make this landing at this airport? And remember, you still not are visual with anything in front of you, right? So unlike all the landings and your practice that you've been doing as a private pilot, you can clearly see that runway literally from 10 nautical miles away, 20 nautical miles away. You can still see that runway. In case of Mechlin, I bet you can see that 20 nautical miles away. It's a really big runway we got at Mechlin here. So how would you make this transition? What if there's some obstacle here? Like, how do you know? So in this case here, what we do is we refer to something called approach plate, which I just pulled up here. So let's say we're doing VOR for runway 34. So in Mechlin, we have two runways, 16 and 34. So this is Mechlin, right? So imagine the runway here, just like as it shows on your ForeFlight. So this is 16. This is 34. So we now pulled out an approach to 34. That means we're coming in this way here, and then we are expecting to make that landing like this onto the runway, correct? So now we'll understand how is that we can do that, you know, without looking at with our beam visual about obstacles and traffic and everything. So if we zoom in, right? So you can kind of also try doing this is if you try to lay this over. So first thing, let's understand where the airport is on that approach plate. Can you guess where the airport is? This is the airport. So that's how they mark it. Yeah. And again, you have lines and numbers telling you what to do. Right? So if you kind of lay this approach plate here, you know this is the airport here at Mechlin. So if you kind of lay this approach plate here on Mechlin, and then you can kind of follow those numbers and what they're trying to tell you. So jumping back here on the approach plate, you see there's this line, right, that's telling you to follow, asking you to follow something. You have this line here, you have this line here. Let's back up and see where that line leads to, and then it leads to a VOR. And then you see it's a Linden VOR. And also these lines, there's one more at Mechlin. There's a VOR right at the airport in case of Mechlin. And you see these triangles here, 586, 569. They're telling you there's an obstruction there. There's a terrain at these levels. Some kind of obstruction. It could be man-made, it could be terrain. And if you pay attention, it's so clear that if you are at Linden VOR, let's spot where Linden VOR is in this case here. So let's see where the Linden VOR is. It is here. It's here. This Linden VOR here, right? And then you have Mechlin right here, correct? So it's saying basically that if you are from Linden VOR, okay. Oh, you got arrows too. Cool. So from Linden VOR, if you zoom in the numbers and see what they're trying to say, they're saying, oh, there's a lot of features here. Spotlight. What is this? Oh, cool. Yeah. So if you see here the number, is it clear? Can you see that number clearly? It's 3,000. It's 3,000. And then it says, also gives you a heading, 308. That's a rate. So here, that's a radial. You see this another number here? A radial 153, but then the head of the arrow is pointed this way. Right? The head of the arrow is pointed this way. That means it's trying to tell you that this radial is from McClellan. So if you understand that, then what you can simply do is, if you tune into McClellan VOR, which is at 109.2, which you put that in your VOR, and on your avionics and the nav there, and then you tune in onto radio 153 in your OBS with the OBS on your VOR, or fly a heading 333 after you track the radio 153, and then keep going, and then you can land, right? But then you can kind of question, I mean, how do I know when can I just keep going? I mean, can I once track 153 and be on a heading 333 and then just keep going down until I see the runway? No, the answer is here. It tells you specifically what altitudes that you need to fly and when do you have to fly them. So in this case here, they're saying at Kuzi, again, which as we just established, you know, how we got those names. Those are just random names that they give it, but you now know how to spot them. See this number here? Oh, here, see this number? Can you guess what is that number in that in that box? So whenever you see a number in that box, it says that's the distance from a VOR. So it's saying that if you are tracking McClellan here, the track from McClellan VOR, if your DME says 12, that means you're at Kuzi, right? If not, if you're connected to your full flight from a Sentry, you can also see your plane actually moving in this direction here. And then whenever the plane is at Kuzi, you're at Kuzi. And guess what? The accuracy is actually, you know, if in the foreflight, when you connect to a Sentry or your Garmin, it moves along with you in your iPad. And when it actually is positioned itself at this place, then you're actually, even in the radar, you're at the same place. So you don't have to worry about the accuracy and all that. So yeah, so with the same idea, right? If you come down here, it's telling you that if you are at Kuzi, please be at 3,000. And you see this line at the bottom. So everything that's written in here has a meaning. Everything that's drawn or written, there's a meaning. There's a meaning why there is this kind of waves kind of thing that's drawn here and everything. And there's also a meaning to why it's written IAF here, it's written IAF here, it's written something different here. So there's a meaning for everything. So what I'm trying to give you a picture and an idea is basically people start off talking about, you know, approach, and people start talking, okay, is it an RNAV approach, is it a VOR approach, and all sorts of things. And they kind of talk about straight up saying, you know, there's a destination altitude, there's a minimum distance altitude. All of that jargon makes you feel, you know, what am I even trying to learn? And it's also tricky trying to start off from having this, trying to understand, you know, making you guys understand why are we talking about this? Because there's this scenario where we created that you're not visual with the terrain, with anything in front of you. And how would you make a landing in that kind of case? How would you navigate yourself in the air? How would you navigate yourself to an airport? How would you make that landing at a runway? How would you spot a runway in the first place? So these are the things. And guess what? So here it says, let me just finish that real quick. And it says, Kuzi, it says, you should be at 3,000. That way you're clear of all the obstacles. And you can say, why 3,000? I've been to this airport so many times on a nice, bright, sunny day in a VFR flight plan. And I've been to this airport. And what I did is I just kept flying at 1,500 feet and I was clear. Why would I want to fly at 3,000? Good argument. But this comes down to an approach designer, to the person who made this. At the time when he made it, maybe he felt, oh, there was an obstruction there. There was something that was demanding that the airplane is better to be off at 3,000 feet at that particular point in time at Kuzi. So it's a designer of the approach, and every approach is designed by an engineer. Then they come up with these numbers, and all we got to do as pilots is just to follow numbers, all the numbers. 333, that's your heading, that's a number. 3,000, that's your altitude, that's a number. And you can see the difference too between the numbers because there's a degree here, that's that's a heading. And there's nothing mentioned here, so that's an altitude. So here it says 3,000. And there's a line underneath. That means until you're at Kuzi, by knowing what your DME tells you here from Mechlin VOR, or you have a ForeFlight, or you have a Garmin or GPS that's going to show you you're at Kuzi. Until you know that, better to stay at 3,000 feet. And then on the heading, you can continue descending all the way to 2,200. And that also is a name there when you get there, is Arden. So when the controller asks you saying, hey, 7243 Foxtrot, where are you trying to go? It's like and he'd be like, hey, 7243 Foxtrot, let me know when you're at Arden so that I can clear you to land. You see, this is the airport here. This is the runway. And this Arden, and look, this is the distance here. So it's pretty interesting that when you say you're at Arden, the controller knows you are this far away from the airport. So it says 0.5, 0.7, 4.9, add all this up, and then what's the distance? Quick math. How much does it add up to? It's 5 miles here, 5.5, and 6.3, 6.4. So 6.4 miles. So when you say you're at Arden, everyone knows that you're 6.4 nautical miles from this runway here, just a runway. So basically, again, coming back to that, the big bold thing that I wanted to always talk about is predictability. Everyone knows and again, everyone here is being a controller or being, the approach control, departure control. I'm talking about I'm talking about the ATC guys. So that's what everyone means. And also not the traffic, because maybe they're private pilots out there. They would never know where Kuzi is, where Arden is. They will never know where those things are. So you can't say, oh, I'm at Kuzi and everyone understands. So I'm only talking perspective about controllers. So controllers will know where you are. And also you say, I'm talking to McClellan Tower. Why would I say everyone? Because what happens is during an IFR flight plan, you are you are talking to a bunch of radio controllers. So you're not only talking to one single person. Just like when you're on a VFR flight plan, right? They say, hey, Cherokee 7243 Foxtrot, after you go so far, just contact a new person at 125.97. Yep. So in a similar fashion, that's what happens here. And then they ask you, okay, you're trying to land at the McLean Airport, so contact McLean Tower when you are at Cousy. And then let's say you're flying from Cousy to all the way back here in here to Arden, and then there's busy, you know, everyone's making their calls and everything, and then you got hold of the tower guy at Arden, and you say, hey, tower 7243 Foxtrot, I'm at Arden, and then that guy clearly knows that you're 6.5 miles from the runway, so he can expect you any moment now. Right? And then you continue here all the way to this point here at 2.1 nautical mile from the VOR, right? So the VOR is here. The VOR is here on the airport, on the runway. I mean, behind the runway, to be precise, or maybe, I don't know, the fields there in the airport. So the VOR is here. So you follow that radio, which is 153, and you see this black arrow here. So it's saying, hey, you're in the clouds. You did a great job flying from Cousy to Arden and flying the altitudes and everything. But what this plate is suggesting is when you are 2.1 nautical miles from the VOR, please make sure you can see the runway. That would be a real challenge to try landing blindfolded, right? That's impossible. I mean, you can. Guess what? They actually made a movie on that, an Indian film where there's this pilot who lands the plane blindfolded. So, I mean, you're not talking about that much expertise here, but this thing here suggests that when you come down here 2.1 nautical miles from the runway, you better see the runway. You better be able to see the runway in front of you so that you can land, right? So that's the idea about approach. So what we learned today is basically a VOR, DME. Wait a second. Get this down. Yeah. So we basically learned a VOR, DME approach for runway 34. That's what you learned today, and it's kind of fancy because you can say, okay, you kind of learned an approach today about, you know, flying that, trying to navigate yourself back to the airport, trying to land, right? So what we learned, what we established here, trying to look at these black lines and there's lines here, there's blue lines, black lines. We didn't still talk about the blue lines, so that's the reason I say, you know, how much ever you keep talking about IFR, there's still a lot more to talk about. And there's so many discussions and everything. And if you must have experienced this, Jessica, when you're trying to look at some YouTube videos, apart from the maneuvers, there's not a lot of information about being a private pilot. And yeah, you have individual people trying to share their experience about how they made a quake or how they failed checkmarks and everything. But when you type in IFR in YouTube, you will get a lot. And one best channel that I would recommend is Flight Insight. This is like the best for IFR. That's what I suggest. So you can get a ton of information, a lot of information here. You see words that you never heard of. I mean, I've seen this video just an hour ago, and then, yeah, I found this pretty new. So there's this, and then you see this another line here. So basically the idea that I wanted to give you is not to find yourself intimidated when you switch from this to this, and then all you see are lines. So basically now you know what that line means and why you have that there, so that it makes your life so easy that you don't have to worry about a lot of planning. And, you know, when you're on this chart, right? And then you want to fly from, let's say, you want to fly from here to somewhere here, then you have to worry about, oh, you have this airport, you have this, oh, there's some glider activity going on here, so better watch out for that gliders, right? There's so many things going on. But once you get onto an IFR flight plan, and just once you get onto an IFR flight plan and just use this chart here and then follow a line, I'm trying to just keep it as simple as possible, just saying line, but then again, fancy term here is called an airway, right? These black lines start always, if you back up all the way, they always start up with the letter V. And as you know, ICAO notations, V stands for Victor. And that line, we call it airway, so that's a Victor airway. So see all these black lines. So every time if you're trying to follow a black line, it's a Victor airway. So here from Williams VOR, if you're following this line here, Victor, you're basically flying Victor airway 200. So it's the kind of basic ideas, and then you will come down much in depth whenever the next session would be, and whatever we're trying to achieve on the next class here. We will go in much more in depth about, you know, why you have this flag kind of thing. It says R, it says X, and you know what's happening. You have this zippered box here. It says Oakland. You have a bunch of frequencies. I mean, you know, we can talk about a lot. We just goes on and on and on, and then there's a lot. But guess what? At the end, you're free from the clutter. You know, you're free from this clutter. You're here, and then all you have to do is follow a bunch of numbers, and not even try to memorize them or, you know, have them in the back of your head all the times. You would just have them with you while you're going. You know, you can, when you're flying, and you can look at them whenever you want to, and then you know where you exactly are. And if controller asks you, say, hey, 7243 Foxtrot, can you tell me where you're at? And then you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm at Lapid. And then everyone knows, everyone's on the same page, and everyone knows, oh, he's at Lapid. Oh, everything's cool. And it's like, hey, you're at Lapid. What are you trying to do? You say, oh, I'm trying to go to Dalton. And they'll be like, oh, cool, we know. Because we know in 25 nautical miles, whatever airspeed that you're flying, because they would know when you file that flight plan, they would know your airspeed. And let's say, he might even ask you, saying, how fast are you going? And you say, oh, I'm going 100 knots indicator. And then be like, okay, maybe in around 23 minutes, he'll be at Dalton. So he's safe. Everything's going good. We're doing our job, much less stressful. And so, but there's also a scenario why I say, you know, everyone knows where you are, and why I say predictability is because there is one entire scenario built here called emergencies, right? Just as you do it in your VFR flying as a private pilot, you're trained to have an instinct of doing what to do. I mean, knowing what to do when your engine quits, when your engine is on fire, right? This is a basic training that you have, that you'll get when you're getting your private pilot license. In the same way, we have emergencies here too. I mean, if your engine quits on you and when you're in the clouds, That's the last thing we could pray for. But then if that's not the case, and if there's some different emergency where you're not able to talk to anyone and you're in the middle of a cloud, that's something to worry about. And that's something we can do as a pilot in our hands. So I kind of, I had this student pilot who was really bothered about stalls. And then he was so much worried about the stalls. He on a power on stall, when the nose dropped, when the wing dropped, right, and the nose went down a little bit, he just gave up on the controls. So I just told him, as a pilot, you always have an option to do something. At the very end, until the very end, you always have an option to do something. And as in a syllabus of getting your instrument rating, you are trained in terms of knowing what to do when you're not able to talk to anyone. Because if you're in the clouds, you're not able to see anything, and you lose your engine, that's a different story. And that could happen, we'll never know. But let's say you're able to fly, everything's good, you know your numbers, you know your directions, you know your VOR, Victor Airways, you know your VOR frequencies and everything, but you're not able to talk to someone. How would you deal with that situation? So that's an entire topic and syllabus and thing where you are trained onto dealing with how would you, kind of deal, what would you do? What are your options? Because even then, all you have is following these lines here. And you only do that. But how would now the ATC would know where you are at, right? That's a little bit of a situation. So it's called lost comms. And that's an entire subject of its own, of dealing with its emergencies and knowing what to do and everything. So I'd say this is it about our class today. Hope you guys understood.
Thank you so much, Uday. That was a lot of information, I know, and I appreciate you going above and beyond and helping us out tonight.
No problem.
It's a lot. There's a lot to talk about. Yeah,
there's a lot to talk about. I hope I spoke the right words.
You did speak the right words. They were all great. All of them. All of them. Thank you guys who joined us, and we'll keep you posted on the next class, but hope you little tidbits that you got out of it. I hope it helps.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Uday. Appreciate you both.
You're welcome. You guys have a good night. Thanks again, Uday. Thank you. Everybody, Girls Love to Fly. Bye, guys.